Another Iranian football team member granted asylum in Australia as one changes her mind as the squad returns to the Middle East. But a move to toughen Australia's immigration laws while offering the footballers asylum is labelled hypocritical. The US and Iran both declare the most intense and heaviest day of strikes so far on targets across the Middle East. And outspoken Queensland Senator Matt Canavan elected as the National Party's new leader.
I stood for this role because I think we are losing our country.
I'm Anton. This is SBS World News. Good evening. One of the 7 Iranian female footballers granted asylum by Australia has changed her mind. It's forced the government to move the group of athletes after the Iranian embassy became aware of their location. Their teammates now en route to the Middle East, their fate in the hands of the Iranian government after their anthem boycott. Last night, they were pulled aside at Sydney Airport to have the option of staying put to them, separated not just from handlers but from anxious crowds of supporters.
Painted on their plane, a sign of what they're leaving behind. Iran's remaining lionesses disembark at Sydney's domestic terminal.
Just ask them for one! Ask them if they want to leave!
Watched last night by an increasingly alarmed gateside audience who've rallied behind their anthem stand.
They ask for help, they're going to get killed.
On the bus, they see a sole torchlight waving, trying to communicate through the glass. At the international terminal, emotions escalate.
Sir, it's not helping anybody. Can we please take your family and friends and disperse? Just for the help. Sir.
Some here say they had messages from family in Iran they wanted the women to hear.
This is what the police told us. They said that they will be one by one asking them if you want to stay.
The Home Affairs Minister at the airport as players and most support staff were separated from their handlers to speak with department officials and interpreters.
Possibly for the first time, these individuals were meeting a government that said the choice is up to you.
Some, he said, were put in touch with family members, but Australia could not guarantee they could be kept safe. One boarded the flight out at the last minute.
Ultimately, in Sydney, none of those individuals made the decision to take up the offer from Australia.
Group members accused of pressuring the women by the minister, not invited to stay.
I'm glad they're no longer in Australia.
Earlier in Brisbane, the minister had offered asylum to player Mohadesh Zolfi and a support staffer. They'd separated from the group on the Gold Coast and were reunited with the other 5, who on Monday had evaded the handlers at their hotel. But this afternoon, Parliament told one of those last 2 changed her mind. After speaking with teammates now in Malaysia, she told the Iranian embassy to collect her.
As a result of that, it meant that the Iranian embassy now knew the location of where everybody was. I immediately gave the instruction for people to be moved.
There have long been concerns about the influence of Iran's Revolutionary Guard over this team. In the lead-up to the Asian Cup, Australia knocked back the visa requests of several Iranian Football Association officials. Its chief, a former IRGC commander. He's now seized on the US president's intervention to claim Australia had pressured the girls to stay.
اخباری که بهشون رسیده بود که آیدا به ما گفتن اینا بیرم همه رو میگیرن اعدام میکنن حرفای بیرم.
The players were referred to as wartime traitors, so it's hard to hear that and then accept that their safety will be assured.
This journey far from over. Naveen Razik, SBS World News.
Australia could soon see a sweeping change to migration laws which could prevent tens of thousands of approved temporary visa holders from arriving in the country. The rushed bill was passed to the lower house today in response to a possible influx of people from the Middle East seeking safety here as the conflict there intensifies. That despite granting asylum to a group of Iranian footballers, the Greens and refugee experts accusing the government of hypocrisy.
I love you, Australia!
A welcome decision from all sides of politics to provide asylum for Iranian women unsafe to return home.
Thank you! Thank you!
The same day it was celebrated.
An important ability to the government's ability to regulate travel to Australia.
A bill swept into Parliament, providing the power for the Home Affairs Minister to block people who've been granted temporary visas from arriving to Australia. The ban would last for 6 months and could impact 61,000 current visa holders in the region. Among them, 11,000 from Israel, more than 1,000 from Lebanon and 7,000 from Iran.
Who had already been granted visas, who had the security clearances. That is a level of hypocrisy that it is hard to stomach.
The minister, on the one hand, is on social media welcoming with open arms Iranian soccer players to Australia, and on the other, slamming the door shut to other people who are just as in need of safety and security.
A last-minute committee hearing held late yesterday.
It is trying to manage the impact on Australia's migration system should they all choose to travel at Australia.
The aim of the law to prevent those coming on temporary visas and then seeking asylum once they get here.
If you sought a visa at a time that your country was not a war zone and then it becomes a war zone, there are visas out there that in the current context we would not have issued.
Just as we saw with the soccer team, not everybody who is leaving Iran necessarily wants to claim asylum somewhere else.
The government already does security checks on those applying for visas and has powers to cancel them individually.
But we have to do it individually for each one, and that's just not a practical thing to be able to do.
It just means that after people have made their arrangements, made their plans, the right to enter Australia can be withdrawn at a moment's notice.
This bill wouldn't apply to those already in Australia and those seeking humanitarian protection. Still, claims of double standards could plague Labor. According to the most recent Home Affairs data, fewer than 5 people from Iran were granted humanitarian visas.
People in Iran cannot put an offshore humanitarian visa application into Australia. If the regime found they did that, they would be targeted immediately.
The proposed law is expected to receive support from the coalition and will be passed in the Senate this week. Rayanne Tamer, SBS World News.
To the Middle East now, and day 11 of the conflict. Fresh airstrikes by the US and Israel have targeted the Iranian capital, Tehran. Iran responding by launching what its state broadcaster said was its heaviest operation yet against Israel and US assets in the region. In today's developments, the US says Iran has faced the most intense day of strikes so far. It has also launched multiple strikes on Iranian mine-laying ships in the Strait of Hormuz. The UN Security Council is set to meet tonight, and France will convene a call with leaders of the Group of 7 on the crisis and rising energy prices, while the world's biggest oil producer warns of catastrophic consequences if the strait remains inaccessible.
An airstrike wiping out a residential building in Tehran as Iran faces another day of bombardment following this declaration from the US's Secretary of Defense.
Today will be yet again our most intense day of strikes inside Iran. The most fighters, the most bombers, the most strikes.
Emergency crews searching the rubble of this apartment block for survivors. But at this intersection, survivors unlikely, as body bags are loaded into a vehicle. Iran's UN ambassador says at least 1,300 civilians have been killed so far, including the 175 schoolgirls and staff killed in a missile strike on a primary school. A wave of Iranian missiles triggered air raid sirens in Israel, but authorities have restricted media from reporting where they land or broadcasting identifiable landmarks.
We have one interceptor over my shoulder right now. We can't show you because we can't show landmarks.
Israel says it's to prevent assistance to the enemy. The fresh wave of strikes condemned by Iran's foreign ministry, vowing retaliatory action.
This is the manifestation of an organized bullying at its finest. The way they see this war is not only a war against Iran, but also a war to control energy resources. It means that they do not have any seriousness, any honesty in diplomatic process.
As the war escalates, so too the pressure on the president to justify it.
He chose to launch Operation Epic Fury because he felt as though Iran was going to strike the United States and our assets in the region first. This was a feeling the president had based on facts.
Earlier this month, US media reported that Trump administration officials acknowledged to congressional staff that the Pentagon had no intelligence to indicate Iran posed an imminent threat. The Pentagon says as many as 140 US troops have been wounded since the war began, 8 seriously. A closed-door briefing to the Senate Armed Services Committee ringing alarm bells for one Democratic senator.
We seem to be on a path toward deploying American troops on the ground in Iran. There is also, as disturbingly as anything else, the specter of active Russian aid to Iran, putting in danger American lives.
Israel now preparing to increase its defence budget by $18 billion. The finance minister says the extra funds will enable the war in the Middle East to be won. Phoebe Dees, SBS World News.
There are reports the International Energy Agency has proposed the largest release of oil reserves in its history to help bring down crude oil prices. The world's top oil exporter has warned of catastrophic consequences for the world's oil markets if the Strait of Hormuz continues to be blocked.
The US Central Command releasing a video it claims to show Iranian ships and mine-laying vessels being destroyed near the Strait of Hormuz as it attempts to keep the narrow waterway open to ships carrying fuel. The US president repeatedly threatening there will be consequences if access through the strait is blocked. His Secretary of Defense reiterating the president's words.
If Iran does anything to stop the flow of oil within the Strait of Hormuz, they will be hit by the United States of America 20 times harder than they have been hit thus far. He goes on to say death, fire and fury will rain upon them.
Iran has warned any ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz will be fired on. At least 11 ships have been attacked since the conflict began. Since the outbreak of the war on the 28th of February, this time-lapse shows the gradual slowing down of ships passing through the narrow waterway. Oil prices have fluctuated wildly with the latest comments by Donald Trump that the war would be over soon, leading to a fall in prices. But a now deleted social media post by the Energy Secretary stating the US Navy successfully escorted an oil tanker through the Strait of Hormuz and the White House's subsequent denial left markets in a spin.
The U.S. Navy has not escorted a tanker or a vessel at this time, though, of course, that's an option the president has said he will absolutely utilize if and when necessary at the appropriate time.
At the opening of the Nuclear Energy Summit in Paris, G7 nations have called on the International Energy Agency to come up with contingency plans. With reports, the IEA has proposed the biggest ever oil release from its strategic reserves to bring down crude oil prices.
We want to be ready to react at any time. We agreed on the principle, and today we're giving ourselves the means with all the tools.
Oil exporters, including Saudi Arabia's Aramco, the world's top oil exporter, has warned of catastrophic consequences for the world's oil markets if the Strait of Hormuz continues to be blocked. The Saudis have lowered their oil output, while Kuwait has also cut its output by 500,000 barrels a day. Gloria Kleisch, SBS World News.
And later in On the Money, the impact on Australia's interest rates, while some leading economists are now predicting 2 more increases in a row. The Nationals have elected a new leader, veteran Senator Matt Canavan, who's declared he can win back the public appeal that One Nation has been eroding for the past year. He's been an outspoken member of the backbench since being demoted under David Littleproud, now seeking to craft a party and defend his political positions.
From the political wilderness of the Nationals' backbenchers on an anti-net zero crusade
through this mad pursuit of net zero emissions by 2050.
To the spoils of leadership.
People are losing their standard of living, they're losing their confidence, we're losing our relaxed and larrikin nature.
After David Littleproud's shock resignation declaring he was, quote, too buggered to continue, an unorthodox choice to lead from the upper house. The former cabinet minister starting the day with a win on the field, pumped to secure another long-held goal.
We need more Australian babies. We need more Australian humour, more Australian jokes. We need more Australian barbecues, sometimes often fuelled by fossil fuels.
The member for the Victorian seat of Gippsland elevated to deputy.
People have been left behind. People are angry, they are frustrated, they expect more from their government, and they also expect more from our mob.
The new leader is unashamedly pro-coal, pro-nuclear and defending his political advocacy over late-term abortion.
All it would have done is if a baby's born alive, would have provided them care. I don't know, is anyone against that? Is anyone against providing care to a newborn baby who's alive?
Bridget McKenzie remains as Senate leader after losing the leadership ballot.
Will mean we won't just be taking it up to Labor, but watch out One Nation.
What is different between you and your policy?
Look, there's a couple of things. Number one, we're a grassroots party, and I really cherish that
they would say
our party, well, they just have not been. Read their constitution, they're not. Our party is controlled by our members. I'm very concerned that the identity politics of division that we've seen on the left is creeping into the right now.
It's just patently absurd. Go to a One Nation function and you will see everybody from the inked up tradesman to the housewife to senior business people. It's only growing because it has an organic groundswell.
Relishing the battle ahead.
I look forward to the contest.
His leader, Pauline Hanson, quickly on the attack, accusing a senator she once courted of joining the woke pylon. Another former National Party member also making a political comeback. The one-time billionaire former senator revealing he'll run in the Queensland seat of Fadden with a very expensive plan.
We think we've got to double the health budget. I know I've recently been in hospital and I've got to get a hospital in one day to make way for someone else's bed.
The changing face of political messaging, yet to be put to the test. Anna Henderson, SBS World News.
Coming up, Israel targets what it says are Hezbollah's financial institutions in Beirut. Also ahead, concerns raised over the emergency flood response for remote Aboriginal communities in the Northern Territory. And a Robodebt probe reveals public service corruption, but a former Prime Minister is cleared. The World Health Organization says it's documented 41 attacks on healthcare facilities in Iran and Lebanon since the latest eruption of violence. It comes as the Israeli military launched fresh airstrikes on the Lebanese capital and a ground offensive in the country's south, aiming to root out the Iran-backed group Hezbollah.
Hitting Hezbollah where its money is. The aftermath of an Israeli airstrike targeting a building reportedly belonging to the financial arm of the powerful political and militia group. Attacks like this frequent over recent days in Beirut's southern suburbs, where Hezbollah holds sway. The end goal for Israel laid out by the president.
If Hezbollah just thinks of continuing to harass, threaten, it simply does not understand what awaits it. And it certainly does not understand that Israel is determined to dismantle it completely.
Israel's airstrikes in Lebanon come after Hezbollah launched an attack on Israel on March 2nd in solidarity with Iran. The Israeli military has since captured several new posts in southern Lebanon and is carrying out what it calls focused raids on Hezbollah's infrastructure. But for dozens of people evacuated from a Christian village in Lebanon's south, they're now at a loss as to why they're mourning one of their own. Sami Al-Ghafari, reportedly hit by an Israeli airstrike in front of his house metres from a church. Residents of the village insist they have nothing to do with this war.
The situation is difficult. We were sleeping in the church the entire time.
The World Health Organization says it's documented almost 24 attacks on health facilities across Lebanon. Israel has previously accused Hezbollah of using medical infrastructure, including ambulances and hospitals, for military purposes.
In Lebanon, we have verified a total of 23 attacks on healthcare, resulting in 14 deaths and 26 injuries.
At a school in Beirut, Hezbollah politicians met with people sheltering there after fleeing their homes.
This is our duty, to stand by the people in their needs and requirements.
Many in Lebanon's capital, like Rima and her children, are now sleeping on the street, surviving on the goodwill of strangers to give them food. The UN says nearly 700,000 people in Lebanon have been displaced in the latest escalation. Virginia Langeberg, SBS World News.
Gerry Adams, a former Irish Republican politician, has been accused of serving as a senior figure in the IRA during a High Court case related to the group's deadly bombing campaigns. The claim was made by Shane O'Doherty, a convicted IRA bomber. Mr. Adams is being sued by 3 men who were injured during bombings in England in 1973 and 1996. They allege he was a member of the group and for a period sat on the IRA's council, which Mr. Adams denies. They are each seeking vindicatory damages of £1 each. Around 18,000 people in the German city of Dresden are set to be evacuated after the discovery of an unexploded World War II bomb. The 250-kilogram device was found near the Corolla Bridge, which collapsed in 2024. Dresden was intensely bombed by the Allies in 1945, and the ensuing firestorm killed an estimated 25,000 people, most of whom were civilians. Some Aboriginal leaders have criticised the Northern Territory's emergency response as nearly 1,000 people from flood-stricken areas remain displaced. In central Queensland, around 200 people spent the night in evacuation centres as floodwaters continue to inundate hundreds of homes and businesses.
For Heyman Liu, this is his first flood in Bundaberg, his home of 3 years now underwater, and all he can do is watch on.
It's crazy. It's just the water level's risen so quickly and the impact that it can do to many of the residents and businesses here.
Despite sunny conditions, emergency warnings were still in place today as the Burnett River reached its peak.
I was able to get out in time with my car and some personal belongings and essentials.
Locals fear they could be stuck in temporary accommodation beyond the weekend.
There are people whose homes and businesses have now been impacted for the 4th time in just over 15 years. That's a big blow, and it's hard to keep picking yourself up off the canvas.
In southern Queensland, Chinchilla also inundated, its river expected to peak tomorrow.
Deck height that I'm sitting on right now is 6.6. And the peak before lunchtime tomorrow is 6.8.
All that publican Peter Sullivan can do is watch and wait after he moved all his inventory out of the hotel.
It's at the second step.
And for remote communities in the Northern Territory, the future is still unknown.
That's what I'm worried about too, Some of these houses probably, are not fit to live in anymore. You might think some of them have probably sunk now during this time of, the amount of water especially.
Concerns now turning to supports available. The Territory's top Aboriginal legal service calling out what it says are inequities in the emergency response.
People are distressed. They don't know what's going on. There's limited to no information in terms of the services that are being provided.
While disaster relief funding opened for Katherine residents, the same for those in surrounding remote communities and outstations is yet to be announced. An NT government spokesperson says all communities impacted will receive support and that areas like Daly River can't receive grants for damaged goods while flooding is still ongoing. The NT opposition calling for the Australian Defence Force to be brought in while the disaster still unfolds. Josh van Staden, SBS World News.
An investigation into the so-called robo-debt scheme has found 2 people engaged in serious corrupt conduct. The investigation by the National Anti-Corruption Commission cleared 4 others, including former Prime Minister Scott Morrison. The Albanese government has also promised to release a sealed section of the Robo-Debt Royal Commission's final report, which concerned those being investigated. And a warning, the story contains references to suicide.
It was an automated government scheme demanding hundreds of thousands pay debts they did not owe. Robo-debt caused significant distress to many and linked to multiple suicides, including Kath Madrick's son, Jared, who received a notice he owed $2,000 to Centrelink under the robo-debt scheme.
Around 2.5, 3 hours later, he'd walked out of the house and taken his own life over this notice that he got.
Overturning its initial decision not to investigate, the National Anti-Corruption Commission investigated 5 former public servants and former Prime Minister Scott Morrison on their involvement and implementation of the scheme. It found former Human Services Department official Mark Withnell and former Social Services Deputy Secretary Serena Wilson both engaged in serious corrupt conduct. Former PM Scott Morrison, who was Social Services Minister when robo-debt was proposed, was found not to have engaged in corrupt conduct.
It is welcome that a couple of staff have been found to engage in serious misconduct, but the people at the very top, the departmental heads, ministers, have not been held accountable.
Mr Morrison welcoming the findings, saying there were significant failures that occurred in robo-debt. As the NAC found, during my time as Minister, these failures were the result of department officials not providing accurate advice to their ministers. The NAC investigation involved 35 days of hearings, all in private, a standard practice unless deemed an exceptional circumstance or in the public interest.
That the Royal Commission made these referrals was not in and of itself an exceptional circumstance.
Nothing's been public. It's business as usual, and the loss and the pain and the anguish that we've all been through has fallen on deaf ears.
Despite the findings, the NAC concluded there was insufficient admissible evidence to refer Mark Withnell or Serena Wilson to the Director of Public Prosecution. Instead, it says recommendations made by the Robo-Debt Royal Commission in 2023 are sufficient to ensure this kind of corruption doesn't happen again. The government says it has accepted in principle all 56 recommendations from the Royal Commission and welcomes the findings made by the NAC. Jasmine Cassis, SBS World News.
And if this story has raised issues for you or someone you know, you can get support from Lifeline at any time on this number, 13 11 14. Is Australia's definition of a terrorist act fit for purpose? That's the question the Independent National Security Legislation Monitor has put to the public during a 2-day hearing. Under Australian law, a terrorist act is defined in part as an action or threat of action intended to advance a political, religious or ideological cause by coercing or intimidating government or the public. It must cause serious harm, death or danger to health and safety.
After being enacted post 9/11, the definition of terrorism hasn't changed in Australia since 2002. But has it stood the test of time?
Does it contain appropriate safeguards for protecting individual rights? Does it remain proportionate to the threat of terrorism that we face today? Does it remain necessary in its scope?
The inclusion of religious motivation in the definition, a hotly contested issue. The UN Special Rapporteur pushing for it to be omitted due to its negative effects.
In particular, discrimination, profiling against particular religious communities, often actual but also even perceived.
A sentiment shared by a number of participants.
Targeting religious motives tends to have a discriminatory and stigmatising effect on religious communities, and that the term ideological can encompass both religious and other ideologies.
Some Jewish groups, though, strongly against carving out the term.
The concept of ideology does not do justice to the concept of religion.
Of the 83 sentencing decisions and appeals for persons convicted of terrorism offences from 2002 to 2024, 78 were cases where perpetrators were religiously motivated.
But Australia's Special Envoy to Combat Islamophobia argues those convicted of terrorism offences repeatedly demonstrate religious illiteracy.
What drives them is not religion, it is ideology, a project wrapped in religious symbolism.
The review also exploring concerns from minority groups following a rise in right-wing extremism. Indigenous groups calling for terrorism laws to be applied equally.
Police and government agencies are quicker and more confident to label conduct as terrorism, where a suspect is black, brown or Muslim, than it is when the suspect is white. And they are slower to call out terrorism and violence against Aboriginal people by white people.
Equality Australia saying the LGBTQI+ community face a similar challenge. The inquiry has received more than 70 submissions. A report will be provided to the Attorney General in September. Mahnoz Anguri, SBS World News.
A Muslim community in Ballarat has voiced their outrage after police opted not to immediately arrest a man who allegedly forced his way into a Ramadan event and shouted Islamophobic abuse at families. The 37-year-old man reportedly threatened children outside the community hall before storming inside to confront those breaking their fast. Police officers discovered the man being detained by members of the public before he was released without charge. Home Affairs Minister Tony Burke says he will raise the issue with the federal police.
People that go in to shout abuse at people and intimidate people and use dehumanising language against people for observing their faith, don't pretend you're patriotic.
Victorian Premier Jacinta Allen says she also reached out to the Ballarat Muslim community over the incident. A Victorian nursing home where almost half of its residents died after contracting COVID-19 during the height of the pandemic has been convicted and fined over the tragedy. Within 1 month, 45 residents at St Basil's Home for the Aged contracted the disease and died from virus-related complications. The judge fined the Greek Orthodox operator $150,000, saying the company was well aware of the COVID outbreak but failed to enforce all measures required to maintain a safe workplace. Families outside the court expressed frustration at today's sentencing.
Disappointing that at the end of the day we have had a penalty of $150,000 to answer for 45 lives.
St Basil's admitted it failed to properly train and supervise 5 workers on how to properly use personal protective equipment at the time. It's since upgraded systems and procedures. South Australian police have returned to Oak Valley Station in the state's northeast as they continue to investigate the disappearance of Gus Lamont. The 4-year-old was last seen at the family property on September the 27th, but more than 5 months on, no trace of him has been found. A widespread technical outage temporarily paused NAPLAN testing for students across the country today who were unable to log into the online assessment portal. The body overseeing the tests has apologised for the disruption, which came on the first day of the nationwide literacy and numeracy test. In a statement, it said the issue has been resolved and monitoring of the platform will continue. Oil price pressures are adding to the case for an interest rate rise as soon possibly as next week, with some banks now forecasting the prospect of 3 rate rises in a row. SBS Finance Editor Ricardo Gonzalez joins us now in the studio with more. And Ricardo, a huge change of view from our leading economists.
Yeah, that's right, Anton. The Reserve Bank lifted interest rates in February, but economists at NAB, Westpac, the Commonwealth Bank, along with investment bank Citi, have now changed their view, forecasting increases both next week and a follow-up in May. The board doesn't meet in April. Inflationary impacts of a higher oil price, just one factor, but its long-term effects are still largely unknown given how volatile it's been. Overnight, there was a huge swing in Brent crude, down 12% at one stage, then back up 11% in the space of a few hours. That's as investors react to any minute detail of progress on the war in the Middle East. And while Brent is down from its peak a few days ago, it's still up 30% on this time last month. RBA Deputy Governor Andrew Hauser told a podcast with political journalist Michelle Grattan the uncertain environment will make for difficult decisions.
You know, it's fair to say, further increases of prices from Iran, if that is what we end up seeing, and that is the big if, is not a helpful development from the perspective of our policy discussion.
Those discussions begin on Monday. But inflation was already rising and above the RBA's 2 to 3% target before the conflict escalated, with the economy growing faster than expected and unemployment low, putting pressure on businesses and perhaps wages. And despite the global uncertainties the war has sparked, the Australian share market is recovering. While it's down from its recent record high, it's now above where it started the year.
If we look to Australia specifically, it's actually a net energy exporter. So higher oil and gas prices actually improve our terms of trade, if you like, and that's a genuine advantage that most other countries don't actually have.
So by the close, the ASX 200 added 0.6% today, led by the materials sector. BHP up 1.4%. Lynas Rare Earths a standout following a supply agreement with Japan. The retailers fell, but the banks did well on those higher interest rate expectations, which also supported the Australian dollar. It's buying 71.83 US cents, which is a fresh 3-year high, and it's stronger against the other major global currencies and approaching $1.21 New Zealand. In commodities, while gold is stronger, silver fell. Oil is now down 5% compared to this time yesterday. But the elevated oil price continues to flow through to petrol, and the government says it's ramping up its crackdown on the sector. Penalties for misconduct will double to $100 million each, maximum for each offence. The ACCC will increase its monitoring of petrol prices, reporting weekly, and the government says it'll work with industry to increase supply to servos. That's as it issues a warning to individuals stockpiling fuel.
What is not understandable, Mr Speaker, is any Australian who seeks to capitalise on this, and I've seen on Facebook Marketplace people selling jerry cans of fuel at inflated prices. That is dangerous. As I said yesterday, it's not without risk to fill up jerry cans and sell them online, and it is a risk to the fuel security as well.
And as airlines warn they'll be lifting airfares in response to surging jet fuel prices, on the ground, transport services may need to do the same, with higher costs already impacting the taxi industry.
You are your own boss.
Mohammed Mollah has been a taxi driver for 10 years, steering through a bumpy time for the industry. He depends significantly on customer contacts to maintain business in a profession that appears to be declining.
Less taxi driver, they are trying to find their other type of job, not in the taxi industry, because it's really struggling before, and now it is more a struggle.
While Mohammed loves being behind the wheel, he says his job is becoming more insecure.
It's all domino effect when you see as a petrol price. My income is reduced more than 40%. That's big effect. Don't have any choice. We have to hook on it and hope for the best.
With the recent surge in petrol prices, there's concern on the taxi industry's broader impacts on getting from A to B if this continues in the coming months.
Something up to 10% of the cost of providing a taxi service can be in fuel costs. And so if we get a 10, 15, 20% increase in fuel costs, that puts pressure on the profitability of providing taxi services, even more acute for our wheelchair accessible taxi drivers.
He says those rising costs currently being absorbed by drivers may eventually have to be passed on to passengers.
It's really whether this is a short-term blip or whether it's going to be sustained over some coming months. And in previous times where we've seen fuel spike for different reasons, state governments have come in and put a special levy in, maybe an extra $1.
That's as reports of some petrol stations across Australia running out of fuel, and one store on the Gold Coast hiking diesel to a screen maxing $9.99 a litre. Cost pressures are also being felt in the ride-sharing industry overseas.
We're paying more per gallon. We're paying more for giving rides.
It's getting kind of ridiculous. Some days your price is low, and then other days your price is high.
Uber Australia has told SBS it's actively monitoring conditions and is reviewing ways to support drivers. Yusuf Saadi, SBS World News.
And a 6-year legal battle has come to an end in a David and Goliath case in favour of an Australian fashion designer. This was the moment business owner Katie Taylor, also known as Katy Perry, found out she'd won a trademark dispute lobbed by international pop star of the same name, Katy Perry, but with a different spelling.
It's a win for manufacturing in Australia, and it's a win for me.
The High Court ruled the designer's mark, which she claimed was created before the singer rose to fame, would not cause confusion, and Katy Perry, the singer, Anton, has been ordered to pay Ms Taylor's legal bill.
Thanks, Ricardo. Coming up, why this Australian city has been ranked as the best in the world. And Cristian Volpato looms large in the Socceroos FIFA World Cup calculations. Melbourne has become the first Australian city to be crowned the world's most exciting metropolis, courtesy of Time Out. The Victorian capital took top spot in the Travel Guide's annual list of the globe's 50 best cities. More than 24,000 locals were surveyed in 42 languages about where they lived, with questions covering affordability, food, nightlife, happiness and city vibe.
Today, Melbourne is on top of the world. Today, Melbourne is #1. And it's been an incredible team effort and an extraordinary comeback story. It was only a few years ago we were ranked, according to some, as the world's most locked down city.
Shanghai, Edinburgh, London and New York rounding out the top 5, with Sydney down the list at 21 and Adelaide at 29, the other Australian cities making the list. Socceroos coach Tony Popovic admits his squad for this month's friendly series against Cameroon and Curaçao will feature some surprises. The matches in Sydney and Melbourne will be the last chance for Australians to see the side on home soil before this year's FIFA World Cup in North America.
With just 92 days until the FIFA World Cup kicks off, the excitement is building for Tony Popovic. And the focus is starting to narrow on those who can help Australia achieve success in North America.
We'd really like to see players that maybe can make an impact for this World Cup, and we'll try and select players, regardless of age, that we feel have a chance to go to the World Cup.
Volpato, lucky to receive it. One player who could finally wear the green and gold is Cristian Volpato. The Italian youth international has indicated he's open to switching allegiances to the nation of his birth after meeting with Popovic.
There were no ultimatums or any pressure. It was a discussion, and you know, if he wants to play for Australia, whether that's, I don't know, let's say 3 months, 6 months, a year, you know, the young men, you have to respect the decisions they have to make.
The Socceroos have been dealt numerous injury blows to start 2026. Striker Mo Toure will miss this upcoming window, while wing-back Lewis Miller is out of the World Cup. Jackson Irvine's status also remains week to week due to a foot injury.
In January, I thought he's out. I thought he's out of the World Cup. Last month, I still thought the same.
Injury concerns aside, the Socceroos' plans for the tournament are all but locked in. After a training camp in Florida in late May, the team will travel to Oakland and play 2 warm-up matches in California, one against Mexico, with Switzerland likely the other opponent before their first group game on June 14th in Vancouver. Popovic has sought a wide range of opinions to develop his blueprint, including from former Wallabies coach Eddie Jones.
He was very open and showed me a lot of information, and also how he learned from things that they did wrong in terms of whether it's family and friends or whether it's not giving enough days off to the staff or the players.
Popovic will name his squad for the upcoming window next week. Adrian Archuli, SBS World News.
The Matildas are preparing for a gruelling battle with North Korea in Perth on Friday night. Both nations travelled west from Sydney after their respective runner-up finishes in the group stages of the Asian Cup. Australia's expecting a physical encounter with a spot in the semi-finals up for grabs.
Most Australians and anyone who watches the Matildas know that we are also fantastic physically, so I think for us it's strength v strength against DPR. So I think for us it's just focusing on what we can and where we can exploit some of their weaknesses as well.
The Matildas are hoping to have Hayley Raso available after her concussion against Iran, while Steph Catley is in doubt after she was concussed in the final group match with South Korea. Tottenham's dismal run of form has continued, with the Premier League strugglers thrashed by Atletico Madrid in the UEFA Champions League round of 16. Spurs lost the first leg 5-2 in Madrid. Elsewhere, Liverpool was beaten in Istanbul, while Barcelona rescued a late draw against Newcastle. The biggest winners of the day were Bayern Munich, the German champions, running riot in Bergamo.
Coaching 15 years, I never do like this thing. It was necessary to preserve the guy, preserve the team. Incredible situation.
Point above the Premier League's relegation zone. But deep into injury time, Dani Olmo was felled in the box, and Lamine Yamal kept to do after Galatasaray's Mario Lemina's 7th-minute header proved the winner. Alexis McAllister could have levelled, but it's advantage Galatasaray at Anfield next week.
And hopefully we're going to go in Anfield and give our best and win.
Another Champions League evening at Anfield is always a great experience, and hopefully it will be a memorable one in a positive way.
England's captain was on the bench, but Bayern has reserves of firepower elsewhere.
Elise!
Worry its rivals. John Baldock, SBS World News.
Bam Adebayo has surpassed the late Kobe Bryant for the most points scored in a single NBA game this century. His incredible tally of 83 points for the Miami Heat against the Washington Wizards saw him move past Bryant's old mark of 81 recorded in 2006. The only man to have scored more points in a game all time is Wilt Chamberlain, who produced a 100-point haul in 1962. Coming up, the weather and glitz, glamour and a very expensive goodie bag. Why everyone's a winner at the Academy Awards. Checking the weather now, an active monsoon will continue spreading across the tropics, covering northern parts of WA, the Northern Territory and Queensland. High-pressure ridges over WA's south will bring moist, cold air onshore. In the major centres, partly cloudy in Sydney, clear skies in Canberra, a shower or two in Melbourne, winds and wet weather in Hobart. Overcast in Adelaide, partly cloudy in Perth, showers over Darwin and Brisbane. Looking further afield, storms in Apia, partly cloudy in Port Vila, fine skies over Wellington and Christchurch. In Southeast Asia, storms in Kuala Lumpur and Singapore, thunder in Port Moresby, wet weather in Denpasar. Further north, sunny in Beijing, clear in Seoul, fine skies also in Shanghai, clouds over Tokyo. Heading west, clear skies in Beirut, cloudy in Tehran, overcast in Jerusalem, overcast also in Islamabad. Onto Europe now, fine in Moscow, rain over London, showers in Warsaw, clear skies in Kiev, thunder in Rome. In Africa, clear in Casablanca, a fine day for Dakar, thunder in Lagos and also Johannesburg. In South America, fine in Panama City, a few showers in Bogota, clouds over Lima, storms in Asuncion. And for North America, snow in Toronto, fine in San Francisco, showers over Washington, D.C., a few showers also over Havana and Honolulu. The 98th Academy Awards are almost here, the Oscars celebrating the best films and performances of the past 12 months. And while many of the contenders will walk away without a coveted golden statue, many will still win big thanks to a jaw-dropping consolation prize. For 24 years, unofficial gift bags have ranged from snacks to free facials to all expenses paid holidays. This year's swag is worth nearly $500,000. And as for the business owners providing the gifts,
coming from Poland 30-something years ago and now being, at the Oscars, it means a lot.
The 98th Academy Awards kicks off on the 16th of March. And that's The World this Wednesday. Rochelle Harrison-Pless will be here with the late news at 10:25. Good night.